can we start a little bit by talking about Anemone? So we're going to come back to this later on, and we're going to bring on Ronan, the co-writer and director of the film, to talk about it in a little bit more depth. But just for anyone who hasn't seen it, what kind of film is Anemone, and why did it manage to bring you back from a period in which you hadn't been acting for a long time?
It began really with the pure wish to do some work with Ronan. I knew that Ronan is a painter. And over the years, since he was a kid, we've made stuff together of different kinds. And knowing that he would go on to make films, and I didn't know if I would find my way back to them, I had a sadness at the thought that I wouldn't ever get to work with him. And so really it just began with the idea of trying to find something, a mutual interest that we could try to develop in some way. And so it's probably 4 or 5 years ago, we started to think about brotherhood. And I've been the observer of 3 brothers raising 3 boys, the cut and thrust of daily life with from the outside, and Ronan had a sort of fascination with the idea of brotherhood from the inside. And so that was one part of it, Mark. And then also, additionally, there was this notion of the complicity between siblings that can allow for prolonged periods of silence. In the case of Ray and Jem, the silence is complicated by the fact that after 20 years of estrangement, they don't really know who that other person is anymore, having had a closeness that was almost unbreachable at one time. So it was those were the 2 principal elements that started us off. 2 brothers reunited after 20 years. We didn't know why. They'd been estranged initially, and that's how it started.
We're going to show a clip from Anemone now, and then we'll show a clip later on when Ronan is with us. So let's just take a look, because I think this gives you a sense of that. Just interestingly, how many people here have seen the film? Okay,
oh, wow.
So a good number. Yeah. Great. Okay, so let's just take a little look. So I'm going to do something I haven't done before, which is that I said we'll come back and talk about the film and the direction a bit later on, obviously, but you co-wrote the film. And in preparation for this, I sent a message to Paul Thomas Anderson saying, I've got this on stage, that was a name you heard drop there, saying, what do you think is the most interesting thing to ask Daniel? And he wrote me back an email which finished, leave me out of this. But he said, as you probably know, and this is no secret, Daniel is an incredible writer. His contributions to the dialogue, whether he writes it beforehand or improvises in the moment, is his secret strength. He is so well read. It's no secret, I'm not betraying trust to tell you this, but I'd be really curious to know what he was reading and what reading went into forming this. Can you say anything about that?
There were 2 books. This only really touched upon it in a very light way, but there were 2 books that I'd read some years ago by a writer called Kent Haruf, called Plainsong and Eventide, that made a huge impression on me. Set in a small community in the West, yeah. I think in Colorado. Do you know?
No, I'm just nodding because I'm...
Yeah, so, you're encouraging me.
I am, yeah. That's right.
You get to know the people of this community in both books, and they were all interesting to me, but the 2 characters that were most fascinating were a couple of elderly bachelor ranchers, brothers, who lived together and in almost complete silence. And and there was something that was very beautiful about their relationship, a sort of tacit understanding they had, the lack of need for words. And it's funny because I come from a household where language was the central thing.
Yeah.
And yet I've always been fascinated by what exists between the words, by what exists outside of the language or in a different space. And he captured it so beautifully in that. So that was that part of it. And then I didn't really feel I needed to do a lot of reading in relation to this, but there were things I needed to learn from a different perspective about the Troubles, because all the reading I'd done quite a lot of in the past was more connected to things like 10 Men Dead about the hunger strikes, for instance, or Jerry Adams' account of the Kesh jail and so forth. So it was all based on that side of the experience. So I just wanted to learn more about the British everyday squaddies experience of life in that, during that time in that place. And it's no point mentioning titles. There are lots of very, very good books about it. I managed to find, I don't know if anyone picked up on it, but Ray's work, figuring out Ray's military trajectory, his career in the army I was very particular about that. And it seemed right to me that he'd begun in the Royal Engineers. There was just something about that, the fact that he's really handy, that he knows how to fix stuff, make stuff, but also Royal Engineers are known to be quite thoughtful people in solving problems. And so, but he's in awe of his, I'm straight off the point here, Mark, I know where. So he's in awe of his brother. His brother, they're so close that it's almost like, I think they're unaware of the separation between them, as twins might have been. And yet, in the balance of power, Jem has the strength. And from the earliest age, for reasons that you discover a little bit of in the film, there's a fracture, there's a flaw in Ray that has him always sort of traipsing after his brother. He needs his brother next to him. So in terms of the military career, like Jem has been a perfect soldier. He's gone from, to para, he's done selection, he's badged into the regiment, and he's, just a star in Special Forces. And my sort of attempt to sort of follow him into that has led me to do a thing called P Squadron, sort of a P company, short for Pegasus Company, which is it's a selection process that the paras particularly have to go through, but you can apply to it from any of the British regiments, and it's a very, very tough ordeal. I think there's a couple of weeks of very, very difficult tasks that you have to succeed at. And if you achieve P Company, you then do parachute training, you get your wings, and you can become, I think it's 16 Air Assault Group. You can then you can go with the paras as support group. So that Ray had sort of chased his brother to that extent that he was an airborne engineer, assault engineer. And
you see, but what's fascinating about this is, as you're demonstrating, the level at which you investigate a character, even when there are large sections of the film in which it is dialogue free, you know exactly where they've been, where they've come from, and that level of attention to detail. And I think that's actually what the question was referring to. You immerse yourself in a role fully.
Try to.
Okay. In that case, let me take you back. Now, I know that everybody says, so 3 Oscars, 4 BAFTAs. Let's go way back, because we've chosen some clips from your career that I think you were involved in choosing as well. So let's go back to My Left Foot. And An extraordinary piece of work, and extraordinarily kind. Can we look at a scene and then talk a little bit about what's happening in the performance?
With pleasure, yeah.
Great,
of course,
thank you.
Yeah.
It's lovely remembering the humour in the film and seeing it still getting that response.
Yeah.
So tell me about the physicality of the performance, because a lot of, this does relate to Anemone. A lot of what you're doing in film, it's not verbal, it is physical performance. It's to do with the way you sound. So tell me about immersing yourself in the physicality of that role.
I had to find my way into it with very gentle steps, because quite obviously now that I would not be able to make that film now for good reason. Okay. At the time it was already questionable, and a couple of the kids that helped me so much at Sandymount Clinic, they made it clear to me that they didn't think I should be doing it. And I said, well, look, I understand what you're saying, but I do think it's an important story, and it's a question of whether it gets made or doesn't get made. And at this stage, at this time, it could possibly get made if I do it. So it just makes sense to me that if you're going to, especially if you've got the responsibility of portraying a life like Christy Brown was a huge and noble figure in Irish society, and so you have an obligation to try to understand as far as you're humanly able to what it feels like. And I began to work a lot with my foot. There was a painter who really came to sort of, talk to me. He also suffered quite a severe disability, not cerebral palsy, but he had struggled all his life with the difficulties that he faced in society because of his disability. So our conversations were very helpful, and also we just talked about painting. But whilst we were talking about painting, I was learning to use my foot, and I started to write to people postcards and letters, and developed from that into sort of holding a paintbrush, and began to work, make paintings.
Yeah. Is there any sense of, does it bother you that there's, he immerses himself? Because as you said, it makes sense. It's what makes it work.
To me, it makes sense, and it's important to say that there are plenty of actors that do superb work that don't necessarily feel that they do have to work in that way, and hats off to them. I don't know if I have to, quite honestly. I don't think I ever really put it to the test. I'm interested in the kind of a way that leads me to wish to work like that. Yeah. And for me, even when the work can demand a great deal of you, mentally, physically, emotionally, I still find that process a joyful thing. It's really important to keep reminding, I think, people that this work where we're playing games for a living, it is joyful work, and that paradox seems to exist, unquestionably, in that no matter what the subject matter is, the process of the work itself, of doing that work, needs to be a joyful thing. And it really was. The important thing to say about my left foot, I was clueless. Like I'd had a chance to make work on a couple of films by then, but I was clueless. Like I went to a wonderful theatre school. They were called theatre schools because there's still an elitism. I don't know if it still exists in this country. The theatre is the superior form. Then there's films, a bit dodgy. Television, like, really? You're going to do television? Like, okay, you've got to pay the gas bill, fair play. But that was the thinking. So the limit of our screen training was like, doing a speech with your arms like that. that was it. There was no concession to that at all because we thought we were working towards a life in the theatre. Secretly, most of us long to make movies because we've been raised on movies. The movies seem just so wonderful to us and magical. And not that the theatre isn't too, but the theatre in itself is an elite cultural form. It's a, there are, of course, there are exceptions, many wonderful theatre companies that manage to, put on affordable performances to everybody. But the great thing about the cinema is that everyone can, maybe not so much these days, but everyone can buy a ticket. And that's what I loved about it, the rough and tumble of the cinema. Theatre essentially relies on people having had the privilege of an education that allows them to believe that they're entitled to go to the theatre. And that education has enabled them to understand perhaps the classics in a way that they make sense to them when they go to the theatre and so on. And so it's a relatively small group of people that is available to, and that is just quite wrong. It always bugged the hell out of me, much as I loved my time in the theatre, that we were essentially performing to a group of, more or less privileged people. And so I don't know why I went off on that one, but
look, let's bring it back to the cinema.
Yes,
and
my left foot. Sorry, Mark, I just picked up. Sorry to stop you, but my left foot. So secretly we wanted to make movies, and then we started to see films that were about things that the theatre definitely wasn't wasn't showing us that stuff, and. So secretly, but in Britain, the chance of a young actor getting to make movies was it was like, you weren't going to do that, probably. You weren't going to get that chance. There was no film industry as such. Few people, but very few, got those chances. And so when I, a few things came my way, I didn't have a fucking clue what I was doing. It's like, I did some TV work. In those days, you'd film whole scenes. The cameras were like Daleks. They'd move around. They'd move around you, and you'd do the whole thing like it was a piece of theatre. And it was relentless. You got to get it right, and then you're on to the next scene. And cinema too. Like I didn't know what I was doing, and I ended up working with Stephen Frears. Stephen was like exasperated with me because I'm always looking for there's something. Like a compulsive need to find something that feels real to me because I need that to be able to maintain the illusion for myself in the hope that I can then, kid other people into thinking that it's real. So, I'm mopping the floor and he says, just keep doing that bit. I mean, that bit's clean. Like, why? So Stephen is like, he's got a very low tolerance for, he's a very clever man with very low tolerance.
Yes.
And he said, go to the cutting room. So he sends me to the cutting room, his editor, Mick Audsley, wonderful, wonderful editor. And that began a sort of lifelong passion for the cutting room. And I'm looking at it and think, oh, I see, right, that's why. Because you need to be in the frame of the film. I was that stupid. So I can't cut a long story short because it's already very long, but so my left foot was the first time. You're always on somebody else's clock.
Yeah.
You're dancing to somebody else's tune. There's never enough time, which is generally true of movies, no matter what. But the vital thing is, have you had time to get ready? And with my left foot, because there was no money when I signed up for it, I moved over to Dublin on the sort of wing and a prayer. There was all the time in the world.
Right.
And I started to work with these wonderful people, both the staff and the kids in Sandymount Cerebral Palsy Clinic. And I had a little house, and I had my paints and my wheelchair and everything I needed. And I guess I had a couple of months before we finally scraped enough money to do the first few scenes. And I thought, I'm never not going to work like this again. And that's sort of more or less how it's been.
Yeah, and the evidence of the 3 Oscars and the 4 BAFTAs is that it worked out all right. Now, I want to say two things. The first one is to the BFI, we're not getting off stage before 1:30. I'm just telling you now. Because there are some things that I know that you are keen for us to look at, and I want to lose as few as possible. So let's take a look at a scene from The Boxer. I believe I'm right in saying that Barry McGuigan said that you actually could have been a boxer.
He did. It's easy to say it, though, isn't it?
Do you want to have a look at yourself boxing, and then we'll take it up?
I'll let you look at it.
All right, okay, fine. So here's the thing that fascinates me about that. I mean, obviously, yeah, you know, the boxing and the Barry McGuigan thing. When you're doing the look which is telling the story because of where he's looking in the audience, the difference between cinema and theatre is when you're doing that, you're not doing it, you're doing it for the camera. And because you are so immersed in the role, I wonder how you negotiate those two things between the actual illusion of being on set with the cameras and your complete immersion in the role. Did that question make sense?
Yeah, it makes total sense, Mark, and it immediately takes me back to my schooling. I was at a school called the Bristol Old Vic Theatre School. They didn't overtly advertise that it adhered to one system or another, but I had an exceptional teacher called Rudy Shelley, who was steeped in the Stanislavski tradition, and which then developed quite naturally. He was born in the theatre during the era of Chekhov era. He worked hand in hand with Chekhov to create a different kind of theatre, where you know, a different degree of naturalism in the theatre. Anyhow, so he was my teacher, and we did a lot of that training. If you were to read, there's one of his books, Stanislavski, is An Actor Prepares, where you could read it 50 times and be none the wiser. But you need a Sherpa, you need somebody that is schooled in that system to guide you through it. And a lot of the exercises, same with Meisner, same with Strasberg, we're all interconnected, but it's a repetition. And there was a very simple exercise that Rudy gave us. And so, in fact, thinking about it now, it is really cinema training. And though he never, I mean, I don't think he even knew it himself, Rudy. But it was be on your own. You just put a chair. Our studios were empty. There was no rolls of honor on the wall or photographs or anything. Just empty rooms. A mirror in the dance studio. Very simple, beautiful spaces where something may or may not happen. And so we put a chair in the middle of the room. The rest of the class would be sat there, your audience. Be on your own. And something clicked with me doing that. Something clicked. Just how not just important, vital the interior life is. Mm-hmm. The interior life of that character that keeps running through, no matter whether the camera's on you, whether it's off you, how close it is, no matter when, that the interior life, that thread just never breaks. And just be on your own. It's so simple and actually quite hard initially, you know. People would be fidgeting and then they'd sort of look at their watch, but it's performative. Why are you doing that? You know, they scratch themselves. Why are you scratching? Do you have an itch? If you don't have an itch, what are you scratching yourself for? You know, it's like, you know, just be on your own. And when we're on our own, it's a very particular thing. We catch ourselves sometimes in all sorts of strange behavior when we're on our own and no one's watching. So that was, does that relate to what you were asking me? Yeah.
It also rather beautifully leads me into the next thing that we've chosen is from being on your own to Ballad of Jack and Rose, in which you are working with Rebecca, your partner, and this to some extent sort of prefigures working with Ronan in Anemone.
Yeah.
We take a little look at a bit of Ballad of Jack and Rose, and then I want to ask you about what it means to be collaborative with somebody who is also sharing your life, because obviously that is a key thing. So let's just take a look at this.
Yeah.
So, you know, in this extraordinary filmography, you know, Lincoln, Steven Spielberg, Gangs of New York, Martin Scorsese, There Will Be Blood, Paul Thomas Anderson, but I know that this film holds a special place in your heart. It was actually the very first time we met because you were out doing interviews for it, written and directed by Rebecca Miller. Tell me about working with somebody who is your life partner in that way.
It was a wonderful time for all of us. We took the kids with us. Ronan, who you're about to meet, was 4 years old, I think. Cashel, his younger brother, took his first steps on Prince Edward Island. We used to do that. We made that decision that only one of us would work at any given time unless we were working together. So there we were, and then if it was during school time, we'd homeschool them for that period of time. It worked well, and they were just sort of charging about like little savages on the island. It was great. But working with Rebecca, actually, it's a funny thing because we'd met because of the Ballad of Jack and Rose. She sent it to me. We didn't know each other. I knew her mum and dad, and was very fond of her mum and dad. But she sent me the script.
Her father was Arthur Miller.
Yes.
You'd been in the film adaptation of The Crucible. And,
right,
yeah.
so I got to know them and spent time with them and used to go and stay with them in the house that Rebecca grew up in. So I heard a lot about her, and she sounded all right. And then I got the script out of the blue and I read it, and it was really interesting to me. But I just, it's all about the time that you're in. Like, what can you offer at any given time of yourself? There's got to be a meeting of two compulsions, I suppose. And I thought, I'm not sure I can do this right now. It was obviously going to be quite demanding in a certain way. Anyhow, but I wanted to see her work, and she showed me Angela. And then we started to talk, and 15 years later, she said, would you ever read it again? And we decided to do it. And it was just, it was a blessed time.
What a lovely phrase, a blessed time. What a lovely turn of phrase.
Thank you, yeah, it was. And this is sort of one of the things that probably contributes to the sort of, he's mad as a March hare. But so I lived separately because, you know, the work requires you to begin with something that's very unfamiliar, the sort of exploration of a life that is unfamiliar. And then through a process of assimilation and repetition, that then becomes familiar. So the familiarity of the family home to me, which was a rental on Prince Edward Island, that just didn't, I didn't think I'd be able to work if we were all living in the same place. And so I had a little hut, just a couple of miles away, on the seafront, and it was perfect. But yeah, the work itself, there was no question, and it's actually very much, he's quite like his mum, Ronan. There was never any question about I suppose in other people's experience, that there could be a conflict of interest there if you're married to somebody that you're then working with, but no, it just seemed to make complete sense. And she's a very, one of the things that was so moving to me making the film with Ronan is to see how he was with the people around him.
Yeah,
because a director is like constant, everyone wants a bit of you all day long. You need stamina, but you also need not everyone deals with that very well. A lot of people start snapping and, you know, but Ronan just had time for everybody, and that's what his mum was like. She just included everybody, and you can't guarantee you're going to get a great film out of it, but what you will get is an experience that people will remember happily. And that was true of Jack and Rose, and it was true of Anemone. I think people would say they had a happy experience working on that.
Okay, so one last thing before we return to Anemone. You said, I don't know, maybe there could be a conflict of interest. I mean, another way of seeing that is maybe there could just be an existing trust.
Yes, yeah. Should have said that.
No, but it's clear that it is important to you. I mean, there are people that you've had that with, I think, Jim Sheridan, and I'm assuming that that's the case as well with Paul Thomas Anderson, for whom you've done extraordinary work. I just want to have a quick look at something from Phantom Thread, and then I just want to ask you something about actor-director relationships. Okay, let's have a look at this.
What about Leslie Manville? What a treasure. What a treasure.
I have to confess, it's become a phrase in our house, because it hurts my ears. So here's my question. So you were talking before about acting, being alone, being on your own. And yet it seems to me that, and this will segue rather nicely into working with Ronan, you have to trust your director. And there are people that you've worked with more than once, and I believe that must be because fundamentally, on some creative level, you have a trust with them. Is that right?
Absolutely right.
So what is that like, the relationship between the actor and the director, when that trust is achieved?
I think it's the epicenter of the working experience at its best. I think it's two things. That, of course, whatever then takes place between you and your colleagues in front of the camera, that's what makes or unmakes the film. But for all of the actors to have that sense of shared of complicity with the director that's a thing of beauty. When it's at its best, it's a thing of beauty, and it's something that look, I worked with I worked with Jim Ivey, wonderful director, lovely man. Same with Stephen, but Frias. But I had that with Jim Sheridan. I met Jim, and I basically had a crush on him within 10 minutes. It's just like, and that sustained us. It sustained us. It's a form of deep nourishment.
So let's move in that case back to Anemone, in which, as we were saying before, when you're working with Rebecca, that you can maybe conflict of interest, but also establish trust. So now you are writing and directing. You're writing and acting, and your son is directing in this film. We're going to show a second clip from it, and we're going to bring Ronan on while the clip is playing. And I'd like you to talk again about that actor-director relationship when it's somebody that's that close, okay?
Have I got time to tell you a story?
You have the time to. You are Daniel fucking Day-Lewis. You can do whatever you want.
It very loosely relates to Anemone, but that clip you showed of the boxing, the other fella in the ring was a boxer, a Belfast boxer called Damien Denny, a bit of a star boxer, and we did some sparring together and loved working with him. But I was in Belfast quite a lot at that time, and I used to stay in Twinbrook, which is West Belfast, a Catholic area. And I used to stay with Terry George's mum. Terry George was the co-writer, and he'd grown up in that part of Belfast. And Terry George's mum was a dinner lady. And she was a wonderful, wonderful woman. She'd recently retired. So, but anyone that came to the house, it was like she had a compulsive need to feed that person. And the morning I came down, I had a sparring session set up in a legendary gym called the Holy Family Gym in Belfast. And I was quite nervous about it. I didn't want to make an idiot out of myself in this storied place. And I walked downstairs, and there was a mountainous breakfast for like 10 people. There was only 2 of us in the house. An Ulster fry, but it was like, she'd built it up. It was like, you remember Desperate Dan?
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, with the mashed potatoes, the sausages, and the fucking steaks hanging off it and everything. And I didn't have the heart to tell her that I couldn't eat this because I love this lady so much. So I sat down and grazed my way through this fucking breakfast. And then I went to the Holy Family. I thought I was going to die in the ring. Anyhow, sorry, I don't know. But yeah, so all my previous experience, Name of the Father, boxer, Belfast, lot of time there, always looking at it from the West Belfast, the Catholic perspective. And so when it came to do Anemone, one of the things that myself and Ronan were both really interested in is, well, yeah, it's not really cool, is it, to show the British military experience because, you know, they were the bad guys, weren't they, in that situation? But no, that's not how it was. You know, it was like anywhere in any conflict, there are young working class people pitched against each other, usually for no good reason. Yeah. You know, people that are doing a job for which they're properly paid, but they go out on the streets. I mean, these lads were going out in what they call bricks, 4-man teams, onto the streets of Belfast, and they didn't know how many were going to come back every time that they went out there. So they too were living through a horrifying experience, and it was a dirty, dirty conflict. And I'd only really examined it from one point of view, and I felt it was only right because I've always had the greatest admiration for people in the armed forces. And anyhow.
No, well, that perfectly sets up. Let's take a look at another clip from Anemone. Co-writer and director Ronan Day-Lewis, everybody. So, Ronan, congratulations on the film, which there was a screening last night, and it's getting very, very warm responses. How did you find the experience of making it? Because it's a very intense drama. It's, at times, fiercely claustrophobic. I think you described it one with 2 guys stuck in a shed. And yet, everything that I've heard from you speaking about it is that it was a joyous experience to make. What was it actually like?
Yeah, it was... I think the claustrophobia of it, like the positive side of that is it was also incredibly intimate, and a lot of the time we were working, even though it was a sizable crew, like the physical room of the shed could only hold so many people. So it was quite like the actual experience of shooting every day. You could kind of kid yourself into feeling like you were almost in this very minuscule kind of production, and that I think was actually, it was freeing for all of us. Like I think for me it took a lot of pressure off, and I was able to kind of just be really present with my dad and Sean and the actors and in general and Ben Forsman, the cinematographer, and we were able to really just create this little world together that felt extremely complete, also thanks to Chris Audi and the production designer who did amazing work, basically creating this dwelling that was also kind of a prison, but had just the level of detail that he went into in actually constructing this world was so complete. And so it was it felt like there wasn't, and also because of just the incredible preparation my dad had done, as he always does, it felt like his commitment to Ray also allowed everyone else to kind of step into that world with such ease. There was so little leap of imagination needed to actually for everything to feel real when you get to set. And you wrote the script together in a room, physically in a room together? Yeah. We never wrote when we were apart. I think partially just for logistical reasons, because the way I would just have the laptop and we would be, it wouldn't really have worked for us. Because you can't type, right?
I can't type.
So tell me about how they relate. Because firstly, you're as writers, I presume it's an equal relationship.
Yes.
Once you're on set, the director. I mean, you said this. The director is in charge. How does that then get complicated or clarified by the fact that you are also related to each other?
I mean, I think that it kind of takes the edge off it in a way, because it's like I think with family, you always have a level of comfort to, you know, that they'll give you the benefit of the doubt, even if you're, you know, in any situation in terms, I mean, ideally, like depending on your relationship with your family, but like, yeah, if you have a good relationship with family members, then it's like, you know, sometimes even if you're like someone's an asshole at some point, it's like you're always gonna, you know, make amends and that was never like it was my goal going in to never be that, and so I was always like really concerned with his first experience working again after a long period of time being as positive an experience as possible and as enjoyable as possible, but also I had that I think we had that trust in each other that, you know, we could we didn't have to tread on eggshells, you know.
So, Daniel, for you, is that trust enhanced by the fact that you know each other so well before? Because again, I come back to this thing, I do think that with all your work, there is the sort of the magical spark between you and the filmmaker that has to be at the center of it.
Yeah, I think that's absolutely true. It was, you know, we got something for nothing. I mean, it wouldn't always work that way with family members, but we already had, you know, just a wonderful, strong friendship apart from anything else. You know, I mean, once your job is done as a parent, which it, you know, I guess it never is in a certain kind of a way, but if you're lucky enough, your kids still want to be around you when, you know, when they're up and running, and we're very lucky that our kids still spend time with us, and we just love that. And so, you know, to be with Ronan just for that extended period of time, for better or worse, no matter what the result of it, it was just a joyful thing to have that time together.
Does it matter that the film is being well received? I mean, look, I'm a film critic, and I do understand that if I was somebody who was making films, I think I just would, on principle, detest film critics. Do you worry about...
You're not the worst, Mark.
I'll take that in the spirit which I'm sure it's intended. Do you worry about the thing going out into the world and being responded to?
Yeah, I mean, but you sort of try wear a cap of defiance a little bit. It doesn't fit that well, you know, like, you know, we made this film, we were happy making it, is what it is, we did what we could, we did our best, etc., etc. And of course, it matters hugely to us. You know, the critics, to some extent, do have the power to either encourage people to see it or discourage them from seeing it. So they are the sort of the kind of, they're the middle men and women between us and the public. But what, of course, we yearn for is that when our job is done, that it will be meaningful to people. And if it proves not to be, it's a very, very bad feeling. It will bring you right down.
Ronan?
Yeah, I mean, I think I feel like you described it as walking around without a skin, like last night. That felt really accurate to me. That it is this, like, I mean, I think, of course, you care deeply because it's something that you've poured so much of yourself into, and it's such a, especially when the film feels personal, which this one really does, and I think I think that the hard part about letting it out into the world is that you have absolutely no control over whether anyone else is gonna, as you said, find any meaning in it. And I think when anyone does, it feels like kind of a minor miracle that anything that you felt strongly about or felt an impulse to translate into that medium, you know, means anything to anyone. So
I think we both agreed absolutely whilst we were writing it that, you know, the way it works, it's no guarantee, but the way it works is that if you are fully invested, even if it's not entirely clear necessarily in every moment what it is that you're saying, but if you're utterly invested in it, then people will lean forwards into that story. But if you're trying to sort of second guess what people will think and how they'll react, and that is you know, like there's an epidemic proportion disease in cinema of that, of just trying to figure out how to get an audience to laugh, get them to cry, get them to whoop and cheer, and you know, and I guess we work more in a sort of interior way, which is like, if it's meaningful to us, if it really means something to us, perhaps there's a chance it will mean something to other people.
Yeah, and I think also to that point, like I think trying to anticipate too much, like how an audience might respond to certain aspects of the film in a way is actually rude to the audience. It's actually not trusting in them enough to have to form their own relationship with the work, or not to form their own relationship with the work. But I think it is actually more respectful to the audience to be truthful in what you're trying to make, and not trying to, you know, anticipate too much how they might react to it.
We'll take questions from the audience in just a moment. I want to ask you one last thing. Forgive me, because I asked you this last night, but I think your answer was particularly telling. I said, you know, look, I only met you for the first time last night. You seem well-adjusted and happy, and, you know, and relationship seems healthy. And I said, where does the darkness in the film come from? Because it's, I mean, and you gave a very smart answer. Tell me, sorry, I'm asking you to repeat yourself.
No, it's okay.
How come somebody who seems as positive, I mean, you've got a smiling, resting face.
Yeah, I've been told that.
Yeah. So where does all the darkness in the film come from?
I mean, I think that I'm always drawn to darkness to work in general, in any different medium, in painting or in film, or, you know, anything else, music that explores kind of the darker aspects of what it is to be human. And I always think about David Lynch, and just seeing the way he talks about his work, because his work is some of his films are these really kind of depraved explorations of just the dark side of the human soul in a way that I think no one else has really explored it, and the kind of darker side of the subconscious, and then you see him talking, and he's just this like delightful guy. He's like beacon of light. But yeah, he was a big proponent of, I think, artists allowing themselves to explore darkness in their work, but not having to exist in a state of darkness. And I think that different mediums allow you to explore those things that aren't really acceptable, or you wouldn't want to kind of lean into in your actual life. So
I think that is a supremely healthy attitude to the art, and congratulations on the film. So look,
thank you.
We have 15 minutes for questions, and obviously hands going up everywhere. I will try and get to as many as possible. So let's start there.
I think for the main part, I mean, you can never entirely sort of seal off the outer world so that it doesn't leach into the sort of self-contained world that you're trying to build for the film. But I'm more or less, you know, utterly focused when I am working on the life of these people, of the, you know, if I'm working with a colleague, on that person, what that person is experiencing, what, you know, I don't think things certainly run through you, like, and there's no accounting for it. There's certain things like, I don't know why I found it so funny, the idea of shitting on a priest. You know, it's not normal. But it just, that, you know, things pass through you, but that's more to do with the sort of work. It's more to do with, I suppose, the interior life. If you found what you're looking for, and that is a living thing in you, for whatever reason, I didn't just find it funny. I mean, I just thought it was hilarious, and I couldn't stop laughing, and that was just the day that was in it, so that's just one example of how things pass through you. And I think more than anything on the set, there's you need to be open, Oh, sorry, but one of the misapprehensions about method acting. Let's get to the point.
I love this. I interviewed you for an hour, but the first question, then we get to the point.
All the recent commentary the last few years about method acting is invariably from people that have little or no understanding of what it actually involves. It's almost as if it's like some specious science that we're involved, or a cult or something. But it's just a way of freeing yourself so that the spontaneity when you are working with your colleagues in front of the camera, that you are free to respond in any way that you're moved to in that moment. And it's not that you're somehow kind of you're sealed off from experience, that you're sort of in a self-contained experience of your own that doesn't allow. So I don't know if that at all connects to your question, but really you just, if you've done your work, you should be really free to accept whatever passes through you in the moment, if that makes sense. I can't think of ever getting a phone. Oh, yeah, not the same thing. I did get a message that when I was in Dublin working on Name of the Father, and I got a message saying, "Oh, Marlon Brando's going to call you." He wasn't calling me to say how great I was. He wanted to do a piece of work. I mean, I revered him, obviously. You know, he was one of the men I most looked up to, Montgomery Clift, another, and I could go on. But anyhow, that wasn't, no, I never got a phone call like that, but I did over the years get one or two notes from people that meant a huge amount to me. And I never forgot that. Alec Guinness, who I looked up to enormously, he was the star of all the films that my grandfather produced, known as the Ealing Comedies. Yes, and I got to know Sir Alec a little bit. My mum knew him quite well, but he took the trouble to write to me after My Beautiful Laundrette came out, and it just meant the world to me. And so I think it stayed with me, that, and I'm always really. I just love to see young people coming up. There's such fine actors coming up at the moment. Right now, a lot of really wonderful actors. You know, Sean is somebody, I've followed him for years. I've seen what he was doing, but just over the last few years I don't know if you saw Broken, where he played the priest in that parish up in the north. That was wonderful, wonderful work, and Time was, again, exceptional work. So, yeah, I try to get in touch with people when something has moved me, yeah. I suppose I don't quite know how to answer it, except to say that it sounds like a bit of a facile answer, but if I find my way into, if I create that illusion for myself that I'm beginning to experience the world differently through this other life that I'm chasing, the physicality, it's never something, it's the same with all sort of exterior business. It's something that needs you need to feel as if it just emerges as part of that. And if it's something that you think, I wonder if maybe you walk like that, it doesn't work for me. That's sort of an old school way of doing things, you know. But I always like, and it could just be that I'm kidding myself, that I am making decisions, but I choose to make them in the subconscious rather than the conscious mind. But I like the physicality to emerge as a natural result of the way that I'm feeling as that person, if you see what I mean. As a kid, the three films I remember being absolutely amazed by are Mary Poppins.
One of the greatest films ever made.
Ever made.
Absolutely, ever made, yes.
What a doll.
Yeah.
Like, I had a crush on Mary Poppins. Julie Andrews, I mean, what a doll.
I had a crush on Dick Van Dyke, but there was
He's still there, you
Yeah,
know.
I know.
Zulu. I remember seeing Zulu the first time and being absolutely terrified, but also the sound of the warriors, the song that the warriors are singing before they emerge from that cover was something that I sort of carried with me for years, that song, that beautiful song. And then Cheyenne Autumn. Those are films. But we used to go to the Saturday morning flicks when I was a kid. I don't think they exist anymore. In Southeast London, you go to the ABC and you'd see cartoons and then the Lone Ranger and then something in a spaceship and they give you a badge and it was just fantastic. But the performance that changed my life, really, and I've seen, I've revered many actors and many performances over the years, but the one that changed my life was Di Bradley in Kes. And I mean, I must have seen that film like probably 15, 20 times, but, when I first saw that, do you know what year that came out?
1973?
73.
Is that right? That sounds right. Yes, I think 73.
Yeah, so I was still very young when I saw that. I mean, it's before I became an actor, but I just didn't know it was possible to do something like that. And it remains to me one of the greatest screen performances I think I've ever seen. This was from a young boy who'd never acted before. And it is true, and a little bit demoralizing, that some of the great performances over the years are from people who have never acted, never trained, never... So, but Di Bradley in that, and the entire film, and it also set me on a path of admiration, lifelong admiration for Ken Loach, who I think is utterly unique, certainly in this country and probably in the world, for having created a body of work behind which is a principle, behind which is a it's just a very unusual, just a unique thing, but yeah, Kes. And Ronan, I showed it to Ronan when Ronan was quite young too.
Yeah, well, I was gonna actually say Kes was one of the earliest films that I remember seeing that really made a massive impact on me emotionally, and yeah, it's so hard to think of like which, to pinpoint specific ones, I guess, but Whale Rider was another one I remembered seeing pretty young that made a big impression on me. And Pan's Labyrinth was like the first film I saw that was really scary, I think, that was like I could almost couldn't watch the whole thing. Like at the Pale Man scene, I kind of almost had to turn it off, but that kind of got me into a whole new realm of films. And yeah, I mean, Rosemary's Baby was also another one that I saw as a teenager that really kind of opened me up and to other films in that vein. And yeah, I feel like I'm forgetting so many.
Yeah, Take It Steady. It's funny because in one respect, I mean, I look back over the years and, there's maybe a handful, maybe less of films that, I've done so little really. I'm proud of a few things, but a lot of things I'd start from scratch. I wouldn't look at them, but if I did look at them, I'd think, let's start from scratch. So I think one thing that I learned as a young person, very kind of relating to that, and it was around the time of my left foot, people were encouraging me to do more work from a very early age. And I have a slow rhythm. I don't know why I do. I'm not quite sure what it means. I'm not sure if even I'm sort of kidding myself about it, but I do have a slow rhythm. It takes me a long time to work towards something and into it, and it takes me a long time to empty myself so that I'm ready to accept something of interest later on. And so as a result of that, I've done very little over the years, but I've at least I knew that about myself at an early age, and I didn't try to dance to somebody else's beat. And I think a lot of young actors, especially if they're lucky enough, I was lucky. I mean, I came up with, a group of actors, really fine potential actors that just never got the chances. I got some chances. When you get chances, if you're lucky, people want to they keep coming for you. They keep looking for you for as long as, the money's coming in. And so it takes a certain steadiness in yourself to say, no, I need to just do this the only way I know how. And I did just do it the only way I knew how. Yeah.
That is a lovely note to end on. Thank you ever so much, everybody, for your questions. And please thank Ronan and Daniel Gomez. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you so much.